Hello, Timeless Gamer crew. Thank you for having me on the show again. We're going to talk about my choice of sim games, and it's going to be from the Super Nintendo. This one, it's ActRaiser. It was released in 1990 in Japan, but we didn't actually get it in Europe until 1993. Now, I was quite lucky that I'd got quite a few contacts and friends that could get imported goods, so I actually got this pretty much at the like about a month after its release. So I got to play it earlier. Obviously, it was the Japanese version, and the Japanese version. I mean, this is a game with a lot of text, but even though it's got a lot of text, I still managed to work my way around it. I didn't have I couldn't read the instruction booklets. There were no online tips or anything. It was just a case of experimenting. So it's quite an intuitive game in that respect, and I loved it. I really did love it. I mean, it's a curious blend of genres anyway. When we say it's a sim, it's actually half action platforming and half God sim game. And when you finish it, you can play it as just a pure platformer, or action platformer. Sorry. So it removes all the God sim elements. But the meat and potatoes, the bigger chunk of the game is the God sim elements, and they're all done really, really well as well. You don't control your people and what they build and that directly like you would in a lot of other games like SimCity. In this, you more influence them, like I suppose a god would, in many ways, and basically what you do is you guide them to different areas of your map, and as you're doing that, you unleash various miracles that can be anything from like lightning to wind to earthquakes. You know what I mean? Like stuff like if the windmills aren't moving, you chuck a gust of wind about, and that keeps your people happy and producing. You also control a little angel who goes around protecting them and killing all nasty demons. So it's a really curious blend of genres, and it's really unique. It really is, and it's fantastic. It works really great for something that's so outlandish. And as a young lad, I remember like kind of being blown away. This really blew me away. How different it were. I mean, obviously I'm a Sega man, but this was this is my second favorite Super Nintendo game of all time, and this was a game which really like kind of made Nintendo a force for me. I wasn't into the NES. It didn't grab me at all. There were never any Nintendo. Many Nintendo machines in the arcades. You got Punch Out. You might see a Mario machine, but they weren't relevant really in an arcade sense. And this is one of the games. This and Super Mario World kind of put Nintendo on the map for me. And for me, it's actually a really big shame that the Super Nintendo didn't have more games like this. When I got my Super Nintendo and I got this game, this were like wow. This blew me away, and I was like, when people talk about Super Nintendo versus Mega Drive, I think had the Super Nintendo had more games like this on it, I'd have been as much as a Super Nintendo fan. But unfortunately, it kind of went a different path. It went back to its more kiddie roots, really. But ActRaiser itself is just a really fantastically, superbly crafted game. Do you know what I mean? It's just so polished. It's so playable. It's so well paced. And when I did finally get to play it in English, the story is actually really good as well. You know what I mean? It's not a standout story like by epic in epic terms, but it's got a lot of good story beats. It's got quite a few emotional story beats in there, which I was really surprised about. Like I say, having already finished it many times on the Japanese version, when I played the English version, that kind of added another layer that blew me away. The action's great. The platforming sections are fantastic. So it's really good they're in there. They really add some more dynamics to the game itself. And each platforming section and each God Sim section has its own theme. Like one of my favourites is one called Blood Pool, and it's got like a horror theme, and it's just really creative and really interesting. And it's also got the man, the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Yuzo Koshiro, who did the music for this. And as Sega fans will know, Yuzo did a lot of Sega games, such as Revenge of Shinobi, and he's just he's a master worker. He's the Streets of Rage man. He's the boy. And he did the soundtracks for this, and the soundtrack is absolutely amazing. It's probably one of Yuzo's best, to be fair. I'd probably have it in my top 3 Yuzo tracks, to be honest. I think it's an absolute belter. Definitely, Revenge of Shinobi and Streets of Rage 1 might pip it, but it is an amazing soundtrack. It's got some fantastic boss fights. It's got really great boss fights, and that kind of blew me away as well, because I'm getting all this great action in what is essentially a God Sim game. You know what I mean? And building these, it was so satisfying building these civilizations, and then going and killing yourself the bad guys who were trying to destroy him. So it's just an epic game, really. It really, really is. And something else that's pretty amazing about it. I mean, it's a really early Super Nintendo game. It's graphically fantastic, and it's barely got any slowdown, which is amazing for a Super Nintendo game that's so graphically impressive. The only time you really experience slowdown is when you use some of the magics. There's one particular asteroid/star magic, and that slows everything down. But that actually feels in context with the event. It feels like a bit of a slow-mo moment, so I can forgive that quite easily. So I would definitely recommend checking this game out. It did get a remake. The remake's total shit. I would totally avoid it. They totally mess up they add extra fort defense elements, and they totally mess up the game's balance entirely. I think it looks garbage. I think the combat's not as. They add more to the combat, but it just doesn't flow as well. It's not as challenging. I mean, it's not a particularly challenging game. I finished it in one day as a kid, and that was the Japanese version. So you'll probably waltz through it yourselves, but it's still an amazing experience. And when I say I did finish it in one day, I literally took the day off school and played it from 7 in the morning till 12 at night, and like literally just as it turned midnight, I beat the last boss. And the last boss is absolutely epic. He's a mint boss, but again, he's easy to defeat. When you know how to defeat him, it's pretty easy. But as a spectacle, he's fantastic, and it is a bit of a mind-blowing game. It's got a wicked boss rush at the end of the game and all, which works really well. And just seeing your cities evolve in that more influential way, watching the people do what they want to do, and kind of finding things and discovering for themselves, and coming to you as their god, is like, oh god, have we found this weird tablet? What do you want us to do here? What's the crack? It's really good, and it's really ego boosting. I like to feel like a god. I like to feel like I'm the man, and I mean, who doesn't? And that's what ActRaiser feeds into. So definitely, this is, like I say, it's my second favorite Super Nintendo game of all time. It's probably a top 10 game of all time for me. It's got an amazing mix of all kinds of stuff. It's pretty much top tier everything. I think the only thing it needs is an extra difficulty level. Once you've beat it, it would be great to just be able to notch it up a difficulty and play through it again that way. But yeah, definitely check this out. Wonderful game. It's a belter, and yeah, do it. I'm a skimmer. Wow.